Hello guys, this is Gabriel Assunção, this is SchellingTube. I'm working with a series of videos related to Schelling's philosophy. This time I'm working with the ideas for a philosophy of nature, which corresponds to the volume 5 of the historical critical edition of Schelling's works. Volume 5 consists of the introduction to the ideas of philosophy of nature, ideas for a philosophy of nature, Also, it has book 1 and 2. Book 1 features scientific experiments on the fields of chemistry, electricity and magnetism. Book 2 features a philosophical theoretical discussion about chemistry, matter, energy, other issues like that. And it's quite an interesting text. It's very difficult to read, and we're working now with the introduction, which offers a panoramic view on concepts such as matter, spirit, nature, the relation between representations and the outside world, between subjectivity and the outside world. So it's a very nice text to read. Even though it's quite difficult, it's worth the effort. So I hope I can help you guys with some reading strategies, with some personal thoughts about the text, and these kinds of things. Well, we stopped at a couple of weeks ago, we stopped at this moment where we had this very dense discussion about the origin of matter. Schelling will inherit a Kantian conception of matter as derived from an opposition of forces. This is an anti-Newtonian concept of matter that Schelling inherits from Kant, and I think probably from Leibniz as well. So for these free thinkers, matter is divisible to infinity, and it is related to the concept of force. Well, this part is quite dense, and it will become more elaborated in book 2, so we'll discuss it as we see book 2 of the ideas, and also on other texts when Schelling works the idea of the construction of matter. Well, what else could I say? In the following pages, now we were on page 82, now we're skipping to page 89. Schelling works with Spinoza now. Spinoza is an interesting thinker who drew Schelling's attention since, at least since his youth, when he was like 16, I guess. There is a small saying of Spinoza which he sends to a friend, and Schelling mentions Spinoza many times in his first philosophical texts. In some of his first philosophical texts, such as On the Highest Principle of Philosophy from 1797, and also the Philosophical Letters on Dogmatism and Criticism from 1795 to 1796, anonymous letters which Schelling wrote. Since those texts, Schelling wanted to reconcile Fichte and Spinoza's approaches to philosophy. According to Schelling, Fichte took philosophy's starting point as the I, the subjectivity. That was the critical approach. Whereas Spinoza began philosophy with the idea of an absolute outside the subject, which would be God. So that would be an external object, so as to say. So that would be a dogmatic approach. Both approaches to Schelling are valid for philosophy. Both of them are possible, both of them are legal ways of doing philosophy. The main difference according to Schelling is that criticism opens more way to freedom than dogmatism does. Even in dogmatism there is a search for freedom, but it is more limited than in criticism. So criticism is a philosophy that enables transformation, changes, more than dogmatism. It has political and economical repercussions, we can think about that. I worked that a little with my advisor in my master's years, Leonardo Vieira. He had some interesting ideas of that, so I recommend you to read his books, his papers, if you can read Portuguese. He also has some writings in German and a few in English as well. But going back to Spinoza and Schelling, Schelling thinks in the ideas. Now going back to the ideas from 79-7, Schelling thinks that the Spinoza's approach to nature is rich, is interesting, and Spinoza managed to think a union between subject and object, between real and ideal, between, if we take Schelling's, anachronistically take Schelling's language from his philosophy of nature, between consciousness and unconscious. So Spinoza managed to think those spheres of being together. However, Spinoza made what would be considered a mistake or a limitation that would be inherent to the dogmatic approach. Spinoza thought the union between object and subject, between matter and spirit, outside the subject. That would have been, according to Schelling, Spinoza's mistake. The union between matter and spirit, if it is to be thought, must be thought starting from the spirit, starting from the subject. It can't be thought as something outside us. It must be conceived from within us. It reminds us of many philosophical traditions, right? The truth is within. Since Augustine, at least, we have this kind of idea, even backwards in time. But for Schelling, the truth lies in the union of matter and spirit is to be found in the subject, and then it can be searched in nature, the objects. And nature itself will be endowed with subjectivity in Schelling's philosophy of nature. But it is a subjectivity that, so as to say, is still asleep, it's still unconscious. And it reaches consciousness in more reasonable forms of being, such as human beings, for example. And Schelling will complement Leibniz and his way of thinking the union between matter and spirit. Leibniz is seen, I believe, as a critical philosopher in the ideas and no longer as a dogmatic philosopher to Schelling. Manfred Dunner thinks that based on Schelling's appraisal of Leibniz in the introduction and in book 2 of the ideas, it is likely that Schelling changed his mind about Leibniz's philosophy from books 2 to book 1, and this means that Schelling got to appreciate Leibniz's philosophy more as time went on. This is quite interesting, right? This is very interesting. So it is likely that the introduction was written before books 1 and 2 of the ideas. And well, this is it for today. On the next week we will be back to the system of transcendental idealism, and on the next couple of weeks we'll start a very interesting topic, that is Schelling's refusal of Kantian, the Kantian teleology, especially the Kantian idea of a regulative theism. So Schelling refuses Kant's regulative theism and Kant's idea of nature as art. We'll see why and how Schelling does that. Goodbye. I'll see you later.